What's up, WC students, and welcome to week 2 of Sermon Notes, and week whatever this is of being locked in our homes. Hopefully, you're doing well. Today, we're going to be talking through Psalm 27, and I think that there's some really interesting things that are happening in this passage that I think can help us in this season of being quarantined. When I think about this psalm and I think about the situation we're in, it reminds me a lot of Lincoln. So you see, Lincoln loves routine and he loves schedules, and when that is all out of sorts for him, his natural inclination is to run to his parents. He wants to spend as much quality time with us as possible. And while it's frustrating for us, it really kind of speaks to how he copes with when things are not the way that they're supposed to be. He feels that the way that he's going to find comfort and stability is to cling to us, is to be next to to be next to his parents. And, as annoying as that is sometimes, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning, there's something that's really like special about that. Like when he doesn't understand the place that he goes to find comfort and to find peace, are the ones who have told him that they love him, and that they're going to protect him, and that's us. And so when we think about this season of discomfort, the season of like not really knowing where things are going to be, and all of us being out of sorts in life. The question is what do we run for comfort? Where do we run when things are uncertain? Where do we run when things are not the way that they're supposed to be in our lives? Do we just continue to do what we've normally done and we just isolate ourselves and just stay in our room? Or do we binge watch shows and just kind of take our mind off of things? Or maybe we try our best to sneak out and be around people because we just want some sense of control. And I think today's psalm is going to really speak to that, because this is another psalm of David's in Psalm 27. And in this psalm, David is in the middle of affliction. He is in the middle of trouble. You have things, he'll say things like, his enemies assail him in verse 2. He'll say that the army encamps around him, or war rises. And so there's a sense of like he is out of control of what's going on around him, and he is in the middle of affliction. He's in the middle of trouble. He's in the middle of discomfort. And so what he recognizes this. He recognizes that there is something not right with where he is in his situation in life. He recognizes that these are not the things that he wants to happen. These are things that this is not what he desires for himself. But then the other thing that he understands is that he is not in control. The way that these enemies are responding, these evildoers, this army, whatever the situation is, he's understanding here in these first few verses that this is not what he wants for his life, and he has no control over what's taking place. And how many of us feel that way right now, as we look out in the world and people are told to stay home, and we look at social media and people are getting sick and are dying, and we say this is not the way that it's supposed to be, and we feel really out of control. We have no way to take control of this situation. We have no way to fix what's going on in our world, right? We have lost all sense of like our routine, and a lot of y'all are wishing you were back at school, even though you hated going to school in the first place. But so you could have a sense of like, man, I know what's happening, and I know it's going to take place the next day, and we don't have that right now. And like David in the psalm, he's struggling with that. But then it's something interesting that David is going to do. Instead of trying to take control, he does something else. He does a lot of what I think we should be doing, what we've seen, what I've told you that Lincoln does, is that he runs to the one who said that he loves him, is going to take care of him. And you see this in verse 4. And he says, "One thing that I've asked of the Lord, that I would seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple." And so the thing that he does is he wants proximity to God. He wants proximity because it's going to give him perspective. It's going to give him perspective in the understanding that what is happening to him, these enemies are not as big as his God. And so when we get proximity when we seek to have proximity to the Lord, that's going to give us the right understanding of how to look at the situation and look at the things that are out of our control. And we start to remember the things that the Lord has said when he says the things that are impossible for man are possible for the Lord. And this idea that we have a God who has who is in control when we feel like we're out of control. And so when we have the proximity, we're going to have the right perspective. And with the right perspective, we're going to know we also are going to know who's going to get us out of this, right? And so what we see in verse 6 of this passage is that David is going to he's not going to take control of the situation. He's not going to say, okay, God has got control, so now I'm going to go start doing things. And we see this a lot in this situation now. We see that people are, they're going and buying up all of the supplies at the store because they want to have control of something. And so if they can control how much toilet paper they have in their house, then they have control over their life. And for David in this psalm, instead of trying to gain control back, he says, okay, God, you've got it. And it says, and I think it's very fascinating. It says in verse 6, it says, and now my head shall be lifted up above my enemies all around me. And I will offer in his tent, the Lord's tent, sacrifices with shouts and joy. I will sing and make melody to the Lord. And so his right perspective has now led him to worship. And he's going to celebrate God in the midst of trial. Not after it's all said and done. In the midst of it, he's going to say, God, you are the one that's going to take care of it. And so I'm going to trust you and I'm going to celebrate you in the middle of these troubles, in the middle of confusion, in the middle of uncertainty. I'm going to trust you and I'm going to worship you. And that is where our posture should be. That is, we have this right perspective of who God is and his control over our situations. Then we can have the right type of posture, and that's one of worship and celebration of who God is in our life. And so how do we get there? And I think that comes in verse 11. He says, teach me your ways, O Lord, and lead me on a level path because of my enemies. And so he says there are two things he does. He says, Lord, teach me and lead me. And these are the things he's going to request of God in this section. And so as he's talked about his situation, he's talked about how God is in control, he starts to make this prayer to the Lord. And in this prayer, he asks, God, will you teach me and will you lead me? And so how often are we being taught by the Lord? What are we doing in this season to grow in our understanding of who he is and our knowledge of him? And so that means what Bible studies are we in? What devotionals are we doing? What music are we listening to that's helping us get an understanding of who God is in our life? And so that way he can help us in this situation. So that way we can have the right proximity towards him. And so we can have the right perspective. And that way we can have the right posture in the sense of worship. And it starts with us saying, okay, God, I want to seek you. And the way that we seek him is that we get into his word and allow it to teach us, and then we follow it. David is saying, teach us, teach me and lead me. And that's the same thing that we should be asking of ourselves is, God, will you teach me your ways and will you lead me in your path? And when we get that type of mentality in us, God will pull us closer and God will respond. And then I love the last thing that David says. In the midst of trial, in the midst of uncertainty, when he is in the middle of this trouble, he is certain and confident of something. And it's the last verse in verse 14. He says, wait for the Lord. Be strong and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord. He is confident that the Lord will respond. He is confident that the Lord will take care of things. He is confident that God will rescue and redeem and save. And guys, for us, we can have that same type of confidence. We can have that same type of assurance that God is going to make right this weird situation that we're in. But first, we've got to seek him. If we're going to have that confidence, we've got to seek him. And the way that we seek him is by reading his word and following it. And as we do those things, we'll have the right perspective, and then it's going to lead us to worship. The reality is that we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. But we are going to be like David, and we're going to wait for the Lord, knowing that he is coming to save. And he's going to make everything right. So the only thing we can do in this season right now is not try to take control and fix everything and make everything right. But our goal is to be close to the one who said he loves us and he's going to take care of us. So as we seek him, as we learn from him, guys, as we follow in his word, then and only then can we have this confidence to say that God's going to do, he's going to move and he's going to take care of it. And we will trust and we will wait. Cool? We love you guys, and we'll see you soon.